Greece hides many dangers. A land shaped by the gods, but shattered from within.
Here we are, the definitive, completely inarguable, no questions asked, obvious choice game of the year. Wink. And what a trip it has been. From cowboys to Norse gods, from managing hospitals to virtual reality robot rescue, everything has led to this.
Armies gather on the battlefields.
So what makes this 20th entry in the Assassin's Creed series worthy of so high an honor? Well, quite a lot, actually.
Lie in the darkness.
To begin with, it's important to understand what the Assassin's Creed series is at its true baseline. Separated from Templar assassin conspiracies, from swordplay and knife kills, from synchronization of data points and the ever-present leaps of faith. Apart from all that, Assassin's Creed is, at its base, a tourism simulator. Hundreds of thousands, perhaps millions of man-hours have been poured into recreating historically significant cities, towns, and regions in such minute detail that just turning one of these games on is eye-opening. Never before has history seemed so lifelike. We've traveled to the Renaissance and the French Revolution, to ancient Egypt, and now the very cradle of civilization at the time of the Peloponnesian War. Taking away absolutely everything else from the series, each entry is an absolute marvel to explore and to walk around in for someone fascinated by history and how we got from there to here. It will always be great for that. Now, the series has had its problems. By the time Unity and Syndicate rolled around, the actual gameplay formula had grown stale. Reluctantly join Guild of Assassins, build up strength, take missions to assassinate foes, rinse and repeat. Combined with a less than stellar rhythm and animation-based combat system that actively prevented fun from occurring, and a parkour system that was just as likely to kill you as help you. And, well, it's no wonder that the series had devolved into a kind of, well, it's always a pretty much solid 8 status. But that all changed with last year's game, Assassin's Creed Origins. Gone were the corridor or location-based missions of the previous entries in the series, for the most part. Gone was the rhythm game that had been substituting for action. Gone was the codex. Gone were most of the present-day interludes. What was left can best be described as a kind of my first modern open-world RPG. A baby Witcher 3, if you will, in which players gained levels and put skill points into skill trees, while collecting ever more valuable loot and traversing a giant, and I mean giant, open world framing all of ancient Egypt, itself gated by high-level enemies in the same way one might see in World of Warcraft, or other massive open-world role-playing games.
Whomever you choose to become, however you choose to fight, wherever you choose to go, you will fit.
With such a vast number of improvements, Origins, and now Odyssey, represents an almost entirely different series from the Assassin's Creeds that came before, and indeed, some that prefer the old versions have complained about as much, and often loudly. So think of Odyssey as effectively Assassin's Creed Gaiden 2, the one where they fix everything in the prototype and build a classic like those old Ezio games.
Act like it. Remember, the fate of Greece journeys with you.
So what does Odyssey do so well? Why is it Hoeglaw's Game of the Year? Well, to start with, it takes the map of ancient Egypt that was so mind-bogglingly big, and it makes it bigger, prettier, and more grand. You can't have an Odyssey, after all, without really feeling the notion of travel, of being separated from the place you are trying to get to by distance, trial, and tribulation.
Or those who forge their own path.
By putting the series in ancient Greece, developer Ubisoft is able to add vast distances between locations separated by huge expanses of the Aegean Sea, complete with boating, ship combat, and sea shanties. Each new port bringing new sights to see, new adventures to unfold. One can truly feel like Odysseus in Homer's own Odyssey. And speaking of your own Odyssey, This new Assassin's Creed is the first time the series has allowed players to pick their protagonist, with either the male Alexios or the female Cassandra.
The choices we make, no matter how small.
Though given the same dialogue, for the most part, each carries their own inflection and sense of self throughout the story, with Alexios portraying a kind of Han Solo-esque scoundrel in over his head, against Cassandra's more straight-laced by-the-book mercenary.
Help us! We don't have to die.
But even there, players are given choice, as also for the first time in the series, they are allowed to control dialogue like in a Witcher or Mass Effect, including by making choices as to how a quest will proceed or resolve, and with the state of the world changing in at least some small part based on the choices made. If Origins was Baby Witcher, Odyssey is Teenage Witcher, not quite as mature or subtle as CD Projekt Red's Epic, but getting there, and getting closer by the game. On top of this single-player open-world MMO with BioWare/Witcher dialogue, role-playing, and decision-making, Ubisoft has layered in system upon system for players to fiddle and engage with. Want to focus on flipping territories to Spartan control? Or maybe you prefer to fight for Athenian democracy? You can. Like a good strategic wargame, the entire Peloponnesian War is manipulable, with loot, and more loot ready to be earned by taking, flipping, or defending territories. But watch out, because the more things you do to aggress against either side, the higher your bounty will get, resulting in a string of mercenaries coming after you, themselves with their own strengths and weaknesses pulled right out of Monolith's Middle-earth Nemesis system, its systems all the way down, and each capable of being used, tweaked, and manipulated for hours, with nary a need to progress the real storyline.
Define who we will become.
And on top of all that open-world RPG systems-based grandeur, the action of the game is as good or better than it has ever been. From fighting multiple mercenaries, each with their own special powers and styles, to scouting out a fort and determining a good way to do your best Metal Gear Solid 5 impression, every single minute of play is responsive, visceral, and fun.
War and bloodshed.
There are only a few games we've ever thought of as a forever game. Those games which, through their systems, their breadth, their sheer enjoyability, could conceivably command a player's interest for 1,000 hours or more. It's not a standard applied lightly, but if a Witcher-esque RPG featuring the action of a Metal Gear Solid, the exploration of a Breath of the Wild, systems of territory control, economics, and nemesis creation, all in an open world as big and as grand and as beautiful as we've ever seen doesn't fit the bill, well, then we don't know what does.
Journeys with you.
Assassin's Creed Odyssey, Hoeg Law's 2018 Game of the Year.